Shadow of the Colossus is a masterpiece of a game, and you probably already know that. It's celebrated for being this artsy, stylish game that sophisticated gamers play while they have a pinky in the air, and it's also celebrated for just being a good old fun boss hunting simulator. And spoilers for a game that's like 20 years old at this point, but the ending has one of gaming's best Easter eggs hidden inside. Before creating Shadow of the Colossus, the developers Team Ico created another game called Ico. A game for a long time I knew next to nothing about other than the cover had a crude drawing of a boy with horns. Now let me walk you through the tragic ending of Shadow of the Colossus. You have scoured the lands hunting Colossus after Colossus, and after defeating each one, growing a little darker in the process. But Wanderer achieves his goal of resurrecting Mono, but at the cost of that darkness turning him into a demon-horned monstrosity. But when a shaman expels that evil outside of that demon, there's only a small infant boy remaining, a small infant boy with horns. Now all it takes is one glance at Ico's North American cover art to see that gasp. That's the same boy. Kind of. Not really. There's actually a bunch of horned demon boys in this game. You don't really see them, but they're there. It's a lot to explain. But, so if anything, there's like a generation of kids with horns, but the same sentiments there. Not only are Shadow of the Colossus and Ico in the same universe, but the events in Shadow of the Colossus led to a generation of horned children who have been demonized by that universe. But Ico came out long before Shadow of the Colossus, but Shadow of the Colossus takes place a long time before Ico, so I worked really hard for this chicken and the egg joke, but now that I'm here, it's not worth it. Hello everyone, my name is Soul, and today I want to tell you about a little game I played called Ico.
We're lost together. Let's run away together. Let's see the sky together. Together. Rest and heal from the darkness on light. Slip your hand in mine. Our footsteps echo like chimes.
I'm going to ask you watching at home to think about the most peaceful time in your life you can remember. And in turn, I will tell you about the most peaceful time in my life that can be summed up by two words.
Maternity leave.
These two magical words are like an adult summer vacation that will never happen again. I remember early mornings with my newborn son, waking up to no alarm clock, and these peaceful memories meant the world to me. And during this time, I was able to invest in one of my favorite hobbies: cracking open my infinite gaming backlog. Every meme you see of like gaming backlogs being absurdly long hits me in my core, because I'm that guy who wants to play everything, and I'm not kidding or exaggerating when I say that. I remember when I was a kid, we had an assignment where we had to write 10 wishes, and mine involved play every single video game ever, watch every movie ever, so on and so forth. And little soul, I'm doing my best. It's hard to be an adult, but I'm trying out here. There are games that have sat on my backlog for well over a decade. There are games that I remember coming out thinking, oh, I gotta check that out, I gotta play that, and they have since been remastered and remade because that's how long they've sat there. Shadow of the Colossus had a remake, but Ico never had such a luxury. But the PS3 version is streamable on PlayStation Plus, and I wish that kind of artificial emulator way wasn't how I ended up playing this game, but it did, sadly. I remember loving Shadow of the Colossus so much, I had to play the game that was on the exact same disc. And as great as the opening cutscene to Ico is, not even 5 minutes into the game's opening, I'm stuck. I literally run around a room until I'm in the stasis of not wanting to be ashamed for looking up what to do next, but also too frustrated to continue. And at that moment, I remembered something. This beautiful site you're watching this on, called YouTube, has a little feature called Watch Later. This is basically just a backlog for a social media site. A backlog that you know I am using quite often, and the first video on this list pretty much acts as a thumbnail for the playlist, and the video that I've seen hundreds of times over, every single time I open my Watch Later, reminding me I need to play this game, is a little let's play of Ico by Pete Dorr. Pete Dorr is a YouTuber I've been watching for so long I'm not gonna say just because I don't feel like doing math. Back in the ancient days when YouTube still looked like this, there was a genre of videos I like to call guys holding up video game boxes while they talk about them. See, when I first started watching YouTube, or anything on the internet really, I was desperate to find people talk about video games, anime, and all that crap I'm into. My real life homies either didn't care about these things or didn't care about them the way that I do or talk about them the way that I did. And a lot of what made early YouTube so special was finding like-minded people and hearing their perspective, and that does exist today, but in a much more artificial way and an expected way. Like, you're used to these things now, but in the mid to late 2000s you weren't. Before, if I wanted to hear someone talk about video games, I'd have to TiVo an episode of X-Play, or I'd have to read a Game Informer article. But when I first really started watching YouTube, I found dozens of people gushing about their favorite games. This was going on before something as crazy as capturing game footage was really a thing, and thus, the genre of guys holding up game boxes was born. And Pete Dorr had a big ol' sexy gaming collection that 12-year-old me had a big hard-on for. If I saw something like PS2 collection or video game tour in my sub box, I would have stopped everything I was doing, hit that video, and let it buffer for an hour and have a good old time. And as a person who was basically collecting games already, I just didn't have like a method or identity to what I was doing, I immediately gravitated toward these videos. I started officially becoming a game collector, which is a hobby I've been on and off with ever since, but I've picked up in the last year, you know, now that the prices have quadrupled for old games. And there were games I heard Pete talk about that I had never heard before. Games like Heavy Rain, Bayonetta, games that I've since played and live on in my gaming subconscious, but I had my first impression with through Pete's description. Then there was one game that Pete talked about a lot, his favorite game, Ico. I know this was a long detour, but yes, this is indeed still a video about Ico. So being his favorite game, Pete Dorr, a very long time ago, attempted to do a Let's Play of Ico. I don't watch a lot of Let's Plays or things of that nature, but if I do, it's usually of games I've already played. That way I can't be spoiled, and by a person who I'm already following, that way I can see their specific reactions. But after running around that first room in Ico for 15 minutes, I thought to myself, wait a minute, there's that old Let's Play. And Pete Dorr, who had played this game so many times, explained how this first room stumps a lot of players despite being incredibly easy.
Not looking at him. But most new players, or most people that I watch when they play this, they wander around this area, and I tell them, you know, alright, here's the first area, good luck, and I don't tell them anything. So they start wandering up here, they start jumping up here, you know, they try everything they can.
This is a big-ass room, so you might be tempted to run around trying to find an opening, find some way out of here.
Really obvious what you're supposed to do once you see it. I'm sure some people catch on, but yeah, you just come right over here, come up top, and then there's just a simple lever up here that you pull.
So now that my intelligence has been destroyed, I realized something about myself. Pete Dorr describes this game as an environmental puzzle. It's a puzzle game, but the clues are in the world, and you have to take a more literal approach to completing them.
It's as simple as this, climbing through the window, but it's sort of like so well blended into the environment that some people don't even notice.
And what I learned about myself is I'm very bad at doing this. I'm very bad at taking note of my surroundings. And this isn't just in video games. This is in real life. This happens. I'm driving and suddenly I don't know where I am. My wife will ask me to grab something from the fridge I say no, I don't see it anywhere. She gets up as a sweat drips down my face, and yes, it was right in front of my face the entire time. I didn't see this obvious lever because I have the spatial awareness of a toddler. Not only that, I didn't see this lever because I play video games, and video games will usually have giant arrows and markers telling me where the lever is. Games also have very obvious controls, and a lot of the times a big fucking button appears right next to the lever that makes the gameplay a little more seamless. I probably did run up to that lever at some point, but it wasn't the obvious button, or I didn't hold it long enough to trigger the animation, so I just kept running around like an idiot. But now that I got through this hurdle, I was confident to keep playing by myself and finally dive into this game that has haunted my backlog for so long. I was ready to play Ico.
Eventually.
So you know how it is. You start playing games, another game distracts you. It took me a while to give Ico another try. Like I was holding a newborn child the next time I tried Levels of Long. But when I did, I started over and I had my Peep Door video at the ready going in this time. But I did something a little different. I kept the video playing, and I even got several hours in, I got as far as Pete did when he abandoned the Let's Play. And I liked having his voice alongside the game. Having a person who not only knew this game inside and out and could have told me anything about it, it's great, but it's even better when you're playing with somebody who cared about it this much.
One of my guilty pleasures playing Ico is, and you're going to probably see me do this through this Let's Play, is I used to love just coming out into the outdoor environments and just looking around. I would just sit here for, every time I got to a new outdoor environment, I would sit here and look around. I would slowly move the camera around, check out the surroundings, and eventually you'll come to find that, hey, that area right over there, I'll eventually go to and play through. Because the entire game is this castle, and for the most part, everything that you see in the background, castle-wise, is something you will eventually get to.
This took me back to a time when I would play games at a friend's house and they'd gush on and on about how great this game was, and I'm sitting there just waiting for that part to happen. But that moment when it clicks and you see what they were going on about, that's bliss right there. This is a big reason why I love analysis videos on YouTube, where I'll watch essayists ramble on for hours about nonsense like you're doing at this very moment. And these videos have such detail and such love for the things they're talking about. So for me, a perfect Let's Play is someone who's able to commit that love and detail, but for the entire duration of a game. That's how I felt watching Pete Door's Let's Play, but as I said, he never finished it until
I want to start streaming on YouTube. Maybe we play through some of my favorite games of all time. Would you guys want to see me stream Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian?
So without knowing that Pete Door was going to start streaming on YouTube, sorry, I don't really watch Twitch all that often, and not knowing that his first stream would be an entire playthrough of Ico, I played all the way up to the end of this Let's Play, ready to take on the game by myself, only to have this perfectly timed stream happen just as I was bummed out that I couldn't play alongside Pete anymore. And when I first jumped into Ico, I didn't have any intention of playing alongside somebody. I've never really done this before. The closest I've gotten is watching walkthroughs of Austin John Plays Link's Awakening, but I didn't finish that game or those videos because that was more like watching a tutorial, and this felt more like, I said, playing alongside somebody else. And a weird part of me scolded myself for doing this. If you couldn't tell already, I have this weird mindset when I play games. Don't look up walkthroughs, don't look up spoilers, don't drop games once you started them, don't play with cheats, don't play on easy mode, don't wear sweatpants on Mondays.
You're wearing sweatpants. It's Monday.
As I've become an old father now, the more that time goes on, I've lessened my grip on these weird chains that binded my game style. I think as a kid, I had the mindset of how things should be done, and as a critic, I'm the only one who would dare call myself that at the time, I thought I had to do things these ways. But as I become older, I've adopted the nature of going where the wind takes me, as my dwindling attention span and my ability to care can really only take me so far nowadays. Whatever can put a smile on my face is going to be what I do. The tiny voices in the back of my brain be damned. So that's what I did. The same guy who held up this box up to my child brain eyes, and the same guy who went hand in hand with it in my subconscious is the guy who led me all the way to the credits. Which is ironic considering this game is defined by hand holding.
Here is probably the biggest gameplay mechanic, though, is being able to grab her hand and run around with her, and this is done by holding R1 on the controller. And if you let go of R1, it lets go of Yorda, and just walking past her and hitting it will automatically grab onto her. And the great thing about this is the way it feels. Right now on the controller, there's a very small, like, pulse, like a very, very slight thump in the controller, which it mimics her movement because it only happens when I grab onto her.
This relationship of Yorda and Ico can represent the best part of this game. These are two characters who say basically nothing, but tell you everything. This is a perfect example of how to use a silent protagonist. Think of a game like Pokemon, a franchise that desperately needs voice acting. The text already tells you what the characters are saying. The animations that happen and tell you what the characters are feeling aren't really open to interpretation, and adding voice acting can only complement these things. But Ico and Yorda, through their actions with so much less, say so much more. When we meet Yorda, she feels like a helpless child. She stumbles around, her AI is not ideal, to put it generously, but you have to hold her hand to do everything. But the more you play, the more you hold that button, navigate through this big castle, the more she seems to adapt. Sure, she still needs you, but slowly evolves from what she was. And as I said, your goal in Ico is escape this big scary castle that you've been brought to. After many hours of puzzle solving, monster whacking, I guess you can call it, you open the big doors, the pass is open, you are free. You take Yorda's hand for the final time and run, and I mean you run. Through the corridors, you run outside, down the bridge to freedom, and then the bridge separates, separating you and Yorda. And even though freedom was right behind me, the thing I fought for, I had, even though I'd reached the goal, I didn't even hesitate to run towards Yorda and jump. The goal of Ico was not to escape the castle. I don't know when it happened, but the goal became saving Yorda. And as I jumped to my doom, it was her turn to take my hand. And sure, the final boss arrives to ruin this moment, but I still couldn't help but cherish this moment. What these two characters had become, it was the same sense when I watched Spirited Away or Ponyo or Wally. These are two characters who you could make an argument for had a romantic relationship, but that's not what defines it. It's two characters bound by one another who simply want to be together. They fight to be together and are happier together. We're gonna talk about this banger of a song. First time I used the save feature in Ico, it lit up a nostalgia spot I hadn't hit in a very long time. Back when I played games on my PS2 or GameCube, we had to manually save the game to record our progress. This could be the PC in Pokemon Coliseum, the typewriter in Resident Evil 4, or the glowy circle thing in Kingdom Hearts. Nowadays, almost every game autosaves on top of having a save in your menu, a save around every corner, and I can't remember the last time I lost a bunch of progress playing a game like I did these older games that relied on these features. That feeling of losing your progress might be the worst feeling I've ever had playing a game, especially if it's a lot of progress or you lose like a special rare item. Don't get me wrong, I don't want autosave to go anywhere. I love autosave. That being said, games that use save points, even if doing so only because they had to at the time, are using a game mechanic. A game mechanic that is, for the most part, dead. But there is a charm in running for my life in Resident Evil 4 and feeling a sigh of relief when I see a typewriter. There's that beautiful deep breath I take when I hit the last save point before the final boss in Kingdom Hearts. Save points are just rest stops, quite literally. And even if we don't want to, even if it's for our own good, it's always good to rest. The reason I love this moment so much is it encapsulates so many great things about this game. You can't just save, you and Yorda have to be sitting together side by side to save the game. Yes, there might be moments you want to put the game down, and that might be a moment where the game separates you and Yorda, and that separation anxiety is all over this game. Wait until we talk about the combat. But there is something beautiful in how two characters desperately trying to escape their peril still have the time to sit down and rest. And if they can, so should the gamer controlling them. I know there's going to be people watching this who don't like this game, and there are plenty of reasons why people don't like Ico. It's not the kind of game when people say they can't get into, I don't understand. I can see why a lot of people couldn't get into this. The first turnoff that a lot of people are going to notice is probably the camera. Maybe the laziest thing a game developer can do with a camera is just give the entire thing to the player. For the majority of this game, the camera is in your hand. Sure, it'll move alongside you, maybe even taper off at one point so you can see that part of the castle that looks climbable or something like that. But other than that, they give you the freedom of moving it everywhere. And I think it's just the combination of some PS2 janky controls mixed with a not very focused camera, they can make Ico a hard sell. But when I say you have complete control of the camera, you do. In cutscenes, you have complete control. As you're running around the castle, you don't even have to look at Ico. And when you do, the castle suddenly feels much bigger. This castle is actually fucking massive, and it took me too long to realize that. And the more you look around, the more you realize how beautiful it is. Like, look at these greens. Look at the world beyond. Oh my god. That's the area I was at earlier in the game. The pass ahead was just above me the whole time. And look at all of this. And all I'd like to say is giving you the freedom to look around allows more freedom. And freedom is one of the best joys of gaming. Another reason you might not gel with Ico is the combat, if you can even call it that. Originally, this game had a completely different combat system, and it actually had a lot more to it, but they stripped it back. And I honestly think it's for the better. You can watch this amazing video by Internet Pit Stop to know more about that.
Even when you are in combat, the point is never to defeat all the enemies and, oh, watch out for your health bar. No, there is no health bar, and the enemies aren't even focused on you. They're focused on grabbing Yorda. And the only way to lose in Ico is to fail at saving Yorda. So when you're in combat, you're not thinking, let me whoop these shadows. You're thinking, let me protect Yorda.
But as one-dimensional the combat is, as tedious as it can be, there is one moment that kept hitting me. I'd be running around doing a puzzle, and I hear that sound. The enemy is near and Yorda is unprotected. I panic. A room full of enemies. They knock me down. They grab Yorda and fly away. I panic. I am standing with Yorda at my back, a circle of enemies all around us, and I whack anything that tries to hurt us. This feeling only serves to sell the connection between you and Yorda, and that is the only point of the combat. Despite rambling on this long, there is a lot more I want to say about Ico. The beautiful art direction, the realistically naturally stumbly platforming, the implied lore, the relationship between Yorda and her mother, this windmill, the box art and how much better the Japanese version is. There's a book. I kind of want to read the book. In the PS3 remaster, what is all this stuff in between Ico and Shadow of the Colossus? I digress. The one thing I am going to definitely hit though is the ending. Keep in mind, when I played Shadow of the Colossus, I was vaguely spoiled. I knew about the kid with horns at the end, and I knew that Wanderer was gonna be no more. And considering how integral it was that I did not know what was gonna happen at the end of this game, I would recommend only those who've played Ico until the end proceed. That being said, Ico ends in tragedy. I should have seen this coming. Shadow of the Colossus ended in tragedy, and I should have known this one would too. Yorda falls victim to the evil of her mother, but the last thing that she does is save me. Everything I said earlier about the bridge, I felt it even more here. Despite how hard I fought to save Yorda, it wasn't meant to be, and I have only this beautiful song to carry me into the credits. Or so I thought. So living in the 2020s, after credit scenes basically exist to cannibalize themselves at this point. They are created only to stoke the flames of another thing, or just for some stupid studio reason they feel obligated to exist, and thus exist literally for the sake of existing. After credit scenes are now a burden. I forgot the power of seeing the final act, easing your mind as the names of all those who worked so hard on the project scroll by, feeling that feeling of closure, maybe even just a twinge of bittersweetness, a longing, and then being rewarded with the proper epilogue. I wake up on a beach. I wander around with questions in my head. Where was I? What was the purpose of this beach? I had so many theories. Maybe I was gonna find some keepsake of Yorda. Maybe there would be some kind of link to The Last Guardian or Shadow of the Colossus I didn't know about. I literally had MCU toxic brain so bad I literally thought that this PS2 game was going to give me a setup for another game. But instead, there she was. There was Yorda. Her eyes open, and that feeling of safety fall upon us both. The game is over. Whenever I finish something I really love, I have a lot of feelings. I have a hole where I kept putting that thing into, but now no longer can. I have a lot of racing thoughts in my head, wanting to dive deeper into the things that happened. The longing to discuss that thing and find out how it affected others. And most importantly, a memory. And memories are beautiful, but the bittersweet thing about them is they aren't your future, they're your past. Just as the clock ran out on this game, so did my maternity leave. And the beautiful thing about maternity leave is not having that timer in the back of your head. It took me back to a time I hadn't felt since I was a kid on summer break. I could wake up with no alarm clock, not even look at the time, and then jump into another world. A world I could jump into entirely. And Ico is a game that people love because they did just that. You have to solve these puzzles as if you're Ico, stuck in a castle with no way to escape. You have to take a moment to breathe, just as if you're two lost souls wanting to rest. And you have to protect Yorda as if nothing else mattered. You have to guide Yorda as if she was holding your hand.
Let's get lost together. Let's run away together. Let's see the sky together.
And if you have made it to the end of this video, Thank you so much. You know, I try to stay on the YouTube treadmill as much as I can, so I don't get to make videos like this very often, but when I do, and people actually watch all the way to the end, that means the world to me. Obvious thank you to Pete Dorr, link to his channel in the description. This video would not exist if not for him. I've been watching the dude for over a decade, so that's a strong recommendation right there. Or any other people's footage I might have used making this video. Thank you so much, but most of all, thank you to those who are watching again. Subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, with that, I leave you.